So this is what my high schooler is doing for history. We are using the good and the beautiful, and I'm going to show you part of how that works for a high schooler who is using it. Full history. This is the year 1 course. The way that they have it broken up is into units. So the first unit, you do ancient history, and then you do Middle Ages, and then you do like the Revolutionary War time period, and then it goes into modern history. This goes up through Ronald Reagan. It has ideas of what you should do, like even for kids in kindergarten. They don't really recommend you start this until after grade 1, and I would agree. There are things they need to memorize. So kids, they have a list of quotes and things that they would like you to memorize. And then it has read aloud books. So as you're going through the unit, you're going to read a book out loud to your kids. And then it just goes into, you're going to read this and talk about it, read it and talk about it. And then it has some student explorers, which I will show here in just a minute. And then your read aloud. And then occasionally there are projects to use as well. Like this one. We did hieroglyphics on some tinfoil, I believe. And they got to look at them, and we talked about the Rosetta Stone and all of that. So that's kind of a look at the course book. This was an Egyptian armband that we made. Now this is to be done family style. So, you know, your high schooler might be too old for some of these activities or might not want to do them. But it's okay. It's family style. My kindergartner loved doing a lot of this stuff. And we just do it together, and it just all works out. Of the good and the beautiful history is this big book of history stories. It has a story that you read. Not every day. It's kind of random. There's no set. It'll just tell you when to do it. And then there's maps in the back too. And we'll go over the maps and talk about the different kingdoms and, you know, different parts of history. And we'll go over it as a family. So that is another part. The next part is the Keys of History game, which it has a game board. Whoops, if I can get it out. It has a game board, which is pretty simple. It's really more of a way to do flashcards in a fun way. And it'll have different people that we have studied throughout the year. And then on the back, you read it and they have to fill in where the red words are. They have to fill in those. And if they get it, then they get to keep the card, which is 3 points. Whoever has the most points at the end wins. We don't play this as often as we should. I can see how next year when we do History 2, we will do it more because it's definitely needed to remember the stuff. When you're doing it family style, they have something called Student Explorers, and that goes from grade 1 all the way up through grade 12, and they have them broken up into sections. So Brock did the grades 10 through 12 Explorers this year. And I'm going to show you what it's like for a high schooler. I really haven't seen anybody go into depth of what is involved for the grades 10 and 12. And I've had a lot of flack from people telling me that it's not enough. And when I gathered it all together, it's definitely way more than enough for history. So I'm going to show you what's involved for a high schooler. One, it's ancient history. And this is going to be for all of Unit 1, the things they need to do. Now, this isn't like the rest of the things. The rest of the things will tell you, the Student Explorers, will tell you when to use what. This isn't like that. This will say Project 1 and this Project 2. Project 3, Project 4, and they have to complete these projects before you finish Unit 1. So like this first one, they have to watch a documentary, and then they have to learn about the Arab Spring, and they have to write an essay, and then they have a visual arts project, and then Josephus' History of the Jews. Now, I don't know if you've ever seen that book, but it's like a couple hundred pages. It's a big book. We went ahead and got the abridged version or the children's version because there was just so much in it. Okay, so the next unit, and then they have things like in each unit, I'll show you another one. Unit 1 didn't have a lot. So Unit 2, lessons 15 through 30. They have to read this book, Alfred the Great. Again, it was a really big book. And then they have to do an essay, and then they have to read these things online. They give you the web address so you know where to go. And then a journal entry, and they have to do some stuff with the Magna Carta. Again, another essay, and then they have terms and some summaries. And then here's a little bit more to go into about John Locke. So they have 8 projects they need to finish in approximately, that would be about a couple of weeks. So then the next section is Unit 3. They actually had a ton of projects. So they had to read 2 books, read here and here. They had to read some more about eminent Americans, and then he had things to read inside the Explorer as well. So there was a lot to do, and then there was some map work that they can do with the younger kids as well. So, and then Unit 4, which is the one we are just finishing up now, he had to read papers on this. He had to do a biographical essay. He hasn't finished that one yet. We're working on this book, The Naked Communist, with my 7th grader and him. It's a big book. And then he has to read a biography. And then these are things subjects he can do. And then he has all of these things that he has to read with it. Read this book. As you can see, according to my hand, it's a thick book. It's like 200 something pages. They needed to read this book. They needed to read this book. One of these biographies. And then this, the first unit that we did, I went ahead and I went online and I printed off all of the stuff that he was going to need to read. And this is just from Unit 1. And I made him a little schedule, but it is actually a pretty thick. When you get all the readings together, it's actually pretty thick. And then he had a couple other biographies, one other biography that I can't find. I don't know where it is. Besides that, he actually read these books as well. These were listed as read aloud books in the Good and the Beautiful's read aloud list. Now, when we started, I didn't think that it was enough, so I had him do all of this plus everything else, and it ended up being a lot more than it should have been. So this last 2 units, we've only been doing what's in the unit because that is a ton. So I'm going to show you everything that he has done this year just for history. These are books, plus this is not one of the books that he read, but it represents another book that he read. So he has all of these books, plus a packet, plus an essay every unit, and then the Keys of History game, and projects. For some kids, for 10th to 12th grade, that is a lot of work. They might not be able to do all of that. My son reads a ton, so he's actually been okay keeping up with it. I thought at first that maybe he was only supposed to do one of the projects per unit, but I have read the course book and online, and I can't find where they say you're only supposed to do one, so I believe you're supposed to do all of the projects in the unit. Now, of course, you're homeschooling. You can choose to do them all, or you can choose to not do them all. Just go by your student. And if they're having a really hard time, you might want to go down to the next Student Explorer, which is the grades 7 through 9. My 7th grader is doing that right now, and the load is much less, much less. But I still believe it is definitely enough for those ages. So I hope that gives you a good idea of what's involved for high school for the good and the beautiful. It is more than complete history of what they do. Again, I'm going to show you guys just the basic view of what they would do. Just a quick snapshot.